You can hear me clap twice. Clap twice. Wow, only 2 sessions. It's the mic. I don't know. I'll do this. Feels really silly with the mask. Mask the mic. Welcome everyone to the, I don't know what number, Mycoalition Town Hall. 7? I think 7. Just a couple months. You guys started though. This is where it started. Yeah. I think with that one that counts. That's 8.
Yeah.
All right. Regardless of numbers, thank you all for being here. It looks like we have a solid showing in the room, like 20-ish folks, and there's a good 25 people in Zoom. Yeah, where we all started, basing this meeting tonight in community and restoring relations, collective healing, collective liberation, love and community. Plus, I'm gonna get right into it since we're already pretty late. And Kevin, you're okay. Veronica and I. Kevin and Veronica, there it is. Hey, Zoom people, are you hearing us well? Especially now with the mic working.
I can hear you.
Barely hear you, Duffy.
All good, man.
I
can barely hear you.
Okay, how about now? Turn the mic this way.
It's not great sound quality.
Okay. Maybe the gain's down. Can you fiddle with that? There's a gain on here, right on this side. Test. Is that better? Zoom people?
Yeah, that sounds better to me.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna start with prayer and land acknowledgement, Veronica and Kevin. So I'll pass it to Kev. Word. Thank you.
Yeah. Can the Zoom folks hear me? By the way, I've got this mic here. Is that a thumbs up?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all for being here. In a former life, I wasn't only a veteran. I'm also one of those yoga teacher statistics that earned my 200 an hour and never taught. But it left an incredible impact on my life. And in between being a veteran and being a yoga teacher, there's there we go, that's better. In between that time, we're not getting kicked back, okay.
There's no sound.
Keep that
Yeah,
going.
don't mute that. I'm saying like mute the volume on this thing.
Back in my early days of naivete and learning how to transition from a life that's regimented in the military to a life that's a little more balanced, I dove into self-help psychology, learning about plant medicine, learning about shamanism, learning about spirituality and religion, and figuring out how to incorporate all of those things into a worldview that worked for me. And so this evening, what I want to share with you is an acknowledgement of spirit and calling in the elements. Thank you very much. And so if you would all gently close your eyes and find a comfortable seated position. Take a few deep breaths into the nose, down into the depths of your belly, into your root, out through your mouth. And let's take 6 breaths together into the nose and out through the mouth with intention. And I invite you to breathe normally and keep your eyes closed. And thank you for contributing salt. Pachamama. 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 Mama Kia. Mama Kia. Mama Kia. Viracocha. 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 Inti. Inti. Rochi. 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 Om Bhu Vaspa. Tatsavitur Varenyam. Vargo Devasya Dhimahi. Yo yo na Prachodayat. Om Bhu Vaspa. Om Tatsavitur Varenyam. Vargo Devasya Dhimahi. Yo yo na Prachodayat. Om Bhu Vaspa. Om Tatsavitur Varenyam. Vargo Devasya Dhimahi. Yo yo na Prachodayat. May all beings find grace from Great Spirit and be illuminated by the eternal light of the sun. May all beings be happy, knowledgeable, and wise. And you're welcome to gently open your eyes. I'd like to invite Veronica as well when she's ready.
Thank you, Kevin. I like to see the old ways honored, no matter what the color of the skin. Gracious Creator, thank you for these souls that have stepped into this room today. Thank you for the passions that drive them. Thank you for their need and their desire to help and end suffering. I pray for open minds and open hearts, that we can come together and see that there are many ways to reach the same path. Honor, grace, and respect allows us to converge at our intended destination. I pray for a release of our projections upon the world. And I pray for us to be able to open, to see the light, to hear our intuition that is our God within speaking to us. I pray for us to learn how to put ourselves aside and serve the greater good in true service, in love and grace. As our ancestors has taught us, they walked this land. They lived and ate and we're in harmony with it. I pray, great creator, that we can remember, coded in our genetics, awaken that memory of harmony with the earth, with the four-legged, two-legged swimmers, stone people, two-leggeds. I ask that you open the creativity centers of all the beings that have arrived here today. Humans being magnificent beings, have great potential for creation, beauty, and love. And they also have great potential for hate and harm and judgment. So I pray that you open us to the creation and the love that resides within us. I pray that we can align in frequency and in love and carry this energy forth to everyone that we will touch after this meeting. I pray for healing, grace, acceptance. Thank you, Great Spirit. Thank you. Thank you. And so it is. Oh. I would like us to do one more thing, if you don't mind. I've recently learned that if 12 people make a vibration together, it creates this column of energy. And if you put intention to this column of energy, it's amazing what it lights up. So this is an old sound, one of the first sounds humans made. The word is hue, H-U-E. You say it like home. And if you join me, I'd appreciate it, because we can light the sky up with this many people. Deep breath in. 3, 2, 1. Hue. Health and healing. Thank you.
How are we doing, Zoom folks? I don't think it's working. So, and before we get into the presentation, Ben Unger, Kevin Matthews of Denver, Colorado. Let's say that. I acknowledge that we are currently occupying stolen lands, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Apache, many other indigenous peoples who live in this land unnamed. And now,
Okay, so we're at 6:30, we're going to 8 o'clock tonight. We will not be using the projector, technical difficulties. So I believe, I can show the slides we have later, and they are on Zoom right now. And Ben and I are Zooming, with that will do all the information as well, in addition to the presentation tonight. And I want to say thank you all so much for coming. I feel very excited about this movement and our.
sorry, pause your, just 1 second.
Yeah.
Jared, do you have your microphone over there? Yeah. It's causing a feedback fuckery. Is it?
Good.
It's off?
Just look it over here.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I would love to acknowledge that this was the very first room where we had the very first Mycoalition meeting. This was back in August, I believe. We had a July meeting of 4 people. And was the other one here as well? Pam? Veronica? Okay. Well, it's been about 6 months. And what I really want to acknowledge is that we've come a long way since then. And it's really important that for me to see all of you here, I know how passionate and concerned and potentially excited so many of you are for 2022, which I personally believe will be a landmark year in terms of policy reform in this work, but especially here in Colorado. And I'm looking forward to working with as many people as possible to create an incredible movement together that's collaborative, communicative, but most of all, makes this medicine accessible to as many people as possible while respecting and honoring the history and the tradition of where this medicine came from. And I believe that the significant improvements and the work that we've created here with this National Medicine Health Act of 2022 as it stands right now has the potential to fulfill that. And
Thanks, Kevin. It's great to meet all of you. I don't want to talk long because we've got lots to hear from you all about. I'll just say a couple of things first. I'm humbled by how many of you have spent so much time and engaged and given feedback. And I hope that throughout this process, one of the most important things for me is that feedback that you're giving is heard and incorporated best we can. And that everyone gets spurred together. One of the first meetings we had, we talked about listening to this process. Okay,
This confusing activities in the Zoom room, but I think everyone can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about when we had one of our first meetings, Kevin, I don't remember when it was kind of the different groups of folks that we were going to listen to. And get feedback from us, we decide how to figure out how to craft this measure. And sometimes I'll admit that speed that we have everyone going on the timeline made us quickly as much as we want to. And I feel like sometimes we're really on a quick pace for folks who felt like they need more time. I apologize for not moving them slow enough.
Yeah.
This one? This helps, is it better?
Yeah. Everybody.
I'll do whatever I'm told. I was just saying that I appreciate how much time people have given,
Especially because we've asked a lot in order to get lots.
It's not like we shared something and gave you one, and then shared something and gave you a couple of weeks. We've been really moving fast, and we're still moving fast in order to make sure we get this done. But along the way, you all have been really generous with your time and your input and your willingness to continue to work with us, and I just really appreciate that. So I think that's all I want to say in terms of how we get started is that I'm honored that so many of you have given so much to make this a better thing. And for those who have been paying attention for a while, hopefully you see that the measure we're talking about tonight has already changed a lot from the input that you've given. And well, I think that's great. So anyway, thank you. I think I have to do this to you too.
I think,
I got magic too.
are you guys hearing me loud and clear, or do I need that? Yeah. Okay. You do that magic, I guess. Okay, hey everyone. Okay, so we're gonna run through the slide show. We have 25 minutes. We're gonna try and keep it close. So we can have a full hour of dialogue and Q&A. And so we're gonna rock through this, okay? Again, the slides will be available for folks that have not already accessed the draft. You can click the link in the Mycoalition email that went out about this event tonight. That'll ping me. You can see the draft, offer your feedback. And what's the last thing? Oh, for folks who may not have seen it already, there is a policy memo that was shared by Duffy and Spore from the Mycoalition newsletter, which goes along with the draft and kind of really helps to navigate, because I know it's a lot of kind of heavy legal jargon in there, and it's just easy to have a reference and a guide to walk you through it. That draft in particular is covering the key policy points and changes that were made, most of which we'll discuss this evening. So first of all, why 2022? You good? Okay. Yeah. Why 2022? I think for a lot of reasons. I'm a native Coloradan, born and raised here. I grew up about 3 miles from here in that direction. And I personally suffered from mental health issues, major depression. It's the reason why I left West Point. Thank goodness I could come back to a state where we have access for certain things, and certain things are accessible, but they may not be accessible in other places. Now, I just learned an interesting statistic not too long ago that Colorado is one of the worst states in the country, 47th overall, in fact, in terms of adults who suffer from mental health issues and having access to mental health treatment. So that's one reason why 2022. And, you know, of course, the pandemic, COVID has certainly exacerbated those numbers. And the metro area, Denver in particular, is really suffering. Now, going along with that, I think we all know that entheogens, natural medicine, and psychedelics themselves are much more than a mental health issue. And I'm excited because the opportunity we have is to get our foot in the door in a really big way with this conversation, and not only educate the population, educate our lawmakers, but really start to catalyze even further of a conversation around this issue that we all started here in Denver together, gosh, over 2.5 years ago. So obviously we need effective alternatives, right, to the current paradigm. We know it's not working. And to me, what that means is that people deserve to determine their own relationship with these natural medicines, whether that is in the comfort and safety of their own home or in the structured setting of a healing center per se. Folks deserve the right to choose how they want to interact with these medicines, whether that's popping a pill or eating the plant, again, in those situations. And I believe that what we've created here, again, has the potential to really embody that, really focusing on choice, focusing on the right to choose how we heal. It is our right to heal, which is a term that SPORE is really embodying right now. Thank you. So agenda. Oh, you do the agenda. So before it, yeah, I forgot to do the agenda. So we're gonna, by 2022, Ben's gonna run through polling, and then we're gonna go through decriminalizing equity in the program, what the advisory board looks like, and the access fund. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a lot harder to talk about polls without slides because I only give you some numbers, and I'll try to do the best I can to kind of give you what the voters gave us in terms of feedback. So we get to listen to voters too, because they in the end are the final deciders, and so it's important to know what they think. And we got some feedback from voters that's, I think, helping us better understand both what the policy might need to look like in order to win their support, but also how we're going to talk about the policy too, because it's a little bit about what we want to accentuate and highlight, because it's a little bit about what they want to hear. And so I wanted to share a little bit. Tonight is about listening to you all, and how we'll get to listen to voters a lot. So I want to make sure we spend most of the time talking about what you want to talk about, but I felt like a little bit of like what we saw in terms of the feedback would be helpful. So we did a poll with 900 voters. And what we did was we tested 3 different versions of a possible ballot title, and 300 voters heard one of the 3 versions. They didn't hear all 3 because otherwise they would have gotten really confused. They get confused anyway. They have no idea what we're talking about, but they were definitely confused. They heard one title. So, and then we used that information to help give us a better understanding of how people thought about different components of the measure. And then we also asked a bunch of questions about different components of the policy. We took some of the most potentially controversial issues in the measure and asked and kind of tried to force voters to tell us to pick one or the other. Like, we gave them some options. Some of this stuff we kind of knew what the answer was going to be, because we kind of know that voters like guardrails. Voters, we know this from other stuff that we've done in other places. They want to be reassured, they want to feel safe, and so there's all these things that they're kind of looking for. So some of the stuff just reinforced what we already knew, but some of it was really useful too, and we're kind of just trying to prepare. So with that, for people like Zoom, you can see these numbers now, and what you can see is we went through a progression to learn Where do voters start when they first hear about our measure? Where do voters go once they understand what we're trying to do? We give them a plain language description of what we're trying to do. And then where do voters end up? After we talk about psychedelics for a long time, there's a long conversation about natural medicine, change how they think about what we're trying to do overall. And what we learned was this: one, the voters are mostly with us on this issue, not by a large margin. With the initiative that the title board gave, initiative 49, voters were a 49 yes, 40% no. For anyone who's worked on ballot measure campaign before, those are not particularly strong numbers, but they're better than where we started in Oregon when we were doing measure 109, for example. Those numbers were a little bit lower. We tested a measure that initiative 49 has enumerated limits in it. That was how it was written. So we tested a measure that says there's no limits in the title. That one tested at the beginning a little bit better, 54 yes, 39 no. And then we tested one measure. The title board described all of the substances that we're talking about in this initiative as natural medicine in the title. We tested one measure that described them as psychedelics just to see what would happen, because it's perfectly possible that the title board gives us that word to describe what we're trying to do later. We want to see how big the difference that made. That one tested the worst. It would actually tested 44 yes, 52 no, which is, as you know, not good enough to win. Then every voter heard the same explanation about what the measure would do. And the good news, after they heard a plain language explanation, we didn't put any spin on the ball, we just told them what it would do. Support went up in all three categories. So it went from 49 yes to 56 yes on the first one. It went from 54 yes to 56 yes. And it went from 44 yes to 52 yes. That's a really good sign. I've worked on campaigns before. I've worked on a ton of ballot measure campaigns in my life. And it's not always the case that when voters hear what you're trying to do, they like what you're doing. Sometimes when they actually understand what it does after they've heard about it, they're like, oh wait, that's not what I want. And support goes down. So this is a really good positive thing. And then finally, after we went through about 20 minutes worth of stuff with people, the other thing that we learned was that at the end of the poll, support basically stayed the same. So we talked to them about so much detail about this measure, way more detail than any average voter is ever going to hear. And sometimes that extra detail actually makes people more nervous. When they hear more about it, they start to get nervous about different components. And we saw a little bit of loss of yes vote in each one of the measures, but not so much that makes us too worried. I mean, I think one of the things we know, I think that's always true. There's a sweet spot in how much information people want. We don't want to give them too much. We want to give them just enough to understand what we're doing, but not get them into weeds so they start asking questions that get them confused, because voters definitely don't understand much of what we're talking about at all. So that's the first thing. I just kind of described that. I'm not going to say that. The other thing I wanted to share with you all that I think is important is that we went through and we asked people about like 20 to 30 different components of the measure. We asked them about, what do you think about allowing employers to prohibit psychedelics at their workplace? What do you think about requiring that people need to pass a safety screen if they're going to get psychedelic therapy? We asked them about licensed facilitators, establishing safety practices for facilitators. We asked them about limits, not having limits. We asked them about a whole set of things, and I'm not going to go through every single one, but I want to share a couple of kind of like broad details. The first thing is, as I was saying before, we knew this before, voters like it when you're putting limits on things. They just want to hear that. So all the stuff that had limits on it, all the things that prohibited things, voters ate all that stuff up. It's good to know that. It doesn't change, I think, how we're approaching anything. At some point, it might inform how we talk about it, because we might want to talk about whatever regulations are in there that will help us. But that was one kind of clear category of things that was reinforced. The second thing that I think was important to learn is that voters really like the equity pieces in the measure. A lot of those equity pieces came directly from the feedback from y'all, and they were majority popular support, I think, universally on all of the equity pieces that we asked about. And then the last thing that's important to know is that voters really prefer limits and they don't like homegrown. And that was pretty, I'm going to share this one with the folks at home so you can see. There's that one, and then here's the slide that has the homegrown stuff on it. By almost only 35% of voters wanted to allow adults to grow psychedelics at home. Voters aren't like sharing that much. Limits were in the kind of like the 40 area too. That's not gonna really, it doesn't change, I think, how we're thinking about the components of the measure. Definitely changes how we think about how we might talk about it. And it's just kind of an important thing to know in terms of how we think about reshape and we inform ourselves in the measure overall. The good news is that we talked about limits. We talked about home grow a lot in this measure. And even though voters heard all those things, it didn't necessarily diminish their support. And so there's some reason to feel like they might be a little bit resilient, but it's just an important thing. And then the last thing I said, and I said this at the beginning, I'll hand it back to Kevin. I don't want, again, I'm happy to answer any question you have, but I have all these slides that I can just like look at and just give you detailed answers. But I hope we don't spend that much time talking about it. To be honest, I hope we talk about what you think and want to talk about. Is that after we did all of that testing, support stayed strong in the end. And the reason why this is so important is that it reinforces a lot of the lessons that we learned from Oregon and DC in 2020. When we ran those measures, what we saw was kind of initial confusion. Once they understood, support went up. And then people could hear a bunch of things and they could even hear some bad things, and their support didn't really diminish. It wasn't like they started in a place, they understood, and their support went up, and then they just kind of stayed there. It was kind of, they were just chill. And if we can just keep people on that yes, chill spot for the entire campaign, we'll be really successful. That's kind of, that work comes later after we file and all those things, but that's kind of what we're aiming for. And we learned that if we can get them to that point, we'll be in a really good spot. So I'll hand it back to you guys, because I think that's what we need to know for right now.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Okay, so we're shooting for, if I can even do this in 5 minutes, I think it'd be helpful. So again, I'm gonna run through the decriminalization components, the natural medicine program, the advisory board. The fund was in there too, which I can talk about, which I will put the slides. So first of all, with decriminalizing natural medicines, as Ben mentioned, I think he mentioned, we're not including enumerated limits. We're not saying 4 grams. We're not saying any specific amount as the language stands right now. So the definition of personal use, again, as it is right now, personal use means the personal ingestion or use of the natural medicine, and includes the amount a person may cultivate or possess of natural medicine necessary to share natural medicines with other persons 21 years of age or older within the context of counseling, spiritual guidance, beneficial community-based use and healing, supported use or related services. Personal use does not include the sale of natural medicines for remuneration, which basically just means profit or quid pro quo. So inside of that, similar to DC, Denver, all the decriminalized nature cities, that also includes ingestion, processing, cultivating, transporting, purchasing, et cetera. Again, all for non-commercial reasons. And it also includes home cultivation, also for personal use. In terms of going along with that, the measure also talks about how to protect parents' rights. So meaning that a person who uses natural medicines for personal use, that does not constitute child abuse or neglect, and it's not a basis for restricting parenting time. In terms of law enforcement and policing, using natural medicines does not include, it's not a basis for punishing or penalizing those who are already under state supervision, parole, probation, et cetera. It's not a basis for detention, search, or arrest, meaning that if a person is in possession of natural medicines, law enforcement can't detain a person, they can't search a person, they can't arrest a person. Possession of natural medicines by themselves is not reasonably articulate suspicion of a crime. It's not enough cause for a crime to have occurred. Law enforcement will need proof. They cannot seize or destroy natural medicines either. And then one more point there in terms of law enforcement, it's not a basis for increased punishment for any other crime if a person is using natural medicines. And then going along with that, the last part here is in terms of public assistance and medical care. Using natural medicines for personal use is not a basis to deny public assistance, medical care, and medical insurance. And so if a person is on Medicare or Medicaid, they can still receive Medicare or Medicaid and the services that go along with that, even if they're using natural medicines. The next slide here, really honing in on the access program and specifically, what are really the most important points in terms of doing the best we can to ensure for equity in the program. That's what the focus for this one is here. And first of all, the Department of Regulatory Agencies will be the agency responsible for establishing rules, administering natural medicine services. As it stands right now, we are regulating only psilocybin and psilocin until September 30th, 2026. And then the other natural medicines, DMT, ibogaine, and mescaline, may be regulated after September 30th, 2026. And by the way, that does not include regulating ayahuasca. And I can get into more details about why of that later. Other important points here is that obtaining a facilitator license must be reasonable and accessible for low-income people and other applicants. And then also, and this is I think this is the most important piece in here, is that the program is required to create policies that promote licensing and services for marginalized communities. So these are our Black, Brown, and Indigenous brothers and sisters, especially folks who may have been overly harmed or disproportionately harmed by over policing or drugs in general. It includes veterans. It includes people who certainly have much more of a traditional or indigenous heritage with this medicine. And what that includes is reduced fees for licensure and training, reduced cost for services, diversity in licensing and availability of services. And then going along with that, a process for an annual review of these policies to make sure that they are in fact doing what they're intended to do in terms of social and health equity. Fees for application, licensing, and renewal for healing centers and facilitators also must be sufficient, but not exceed an amount necessary to cover the costs of the program. And then additionally, the regulatory agency may adopt different rules for natural medicines that regulate them differently. I think a really big important one to consider here is like ibogaine, right? That needs to be regulated differently than psilocybin, especially given its safety profile. The advisory board. So the advisory board it's appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, and they are tasked with specifically making recommendations to the regulatory agency. As it stands right now, membership includes expertise on the issue. We knew that was very important. So meaning folks who may have experience in religious use of psychedelic substances, issues confronting veterans, traditional use of psychedelic substances, social, racial, and economic health equity and justice, and then past criminal reform efforts in Colorado. And then there are additional members that have other qualifications as well, mental health professionals, other folks like that, which are all in the language. And then specifically the board is tasked not only to make these recommendations, but an annual review every single year on the recommendations, including all of the rules that are established by DORA, requirements to ensure the program is equitable and inclusive, and specifically also the board is tasked with making specific recommendations on the appropriate regulatory considerations or rules for each natural medicine. Okay, and I'm going to talk briefly about the Natural Medicine Access Program Fund. And the fund, to pull this out from just file the synapse here for a second. So the fund is funded by the general fund. So what that means, initially funded by the general fund. And all proceeds that go into the fund, into the access fund, must be used for implementation of the program, appointing the advisory board, whatever needs to go along with the advisory board, and then also specifically in terms of the advisory board, how are those funds being used, not only for the program, but also for the equity provisions that we have in the language. And, okay, did I do it?
You did it.
I did it, 6:56, all right. So again, this slide will be available, this deck. Again, the language is accessible. And the memo that goes along with the language, so folks can help navigate it, is also accessible as well. And from there, definitely I think we're ready to move on to the next.
Yeah, I'm just gonna close this. We don't need this anymore. Right?
Correct. Okay, this setting is interesting for, yeah, we can circle up, we can, move chairs to the back. Is that necessary?
No, we can do a bio break and then also just breathe.
Who needs a bio break? We're gonna go to like 8:15. There's a good few hands. I want people to feel.
Right around the corner right here.
So.
5 minute bio break.
5 minute bio break.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay.
Hey, Duffy? Duffy,
Hey, Duffy.
yeah, Duffy,
Hey, Duffy.
that's all right. Yeah, I'm wondering if I can just dial back in on my phone. That's all right.
Whew, I'm gonna have to go, but I want to say something, and I don't know if everybody can hear me there. Duffy? Duffy? Hey, Duffy?
I think,
Hello? I wonder if they have it muted.
the schools are not good for a circle.
Hi, Andrea. I don't think he can hear you, but if you want to voice anything, I'm taking some notes here too, just so I make sure that folks in the chat are heard.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know how long the meeting is gonna last.
Until
And
8.
there's, okay, so I have to take off pretty soon, but there's a couple of things, and I think that I really hope that the indigenous voices here are able to speak up. And one of the things that I really see concerning right now are that, okay, Duffy, are you able to hear us now? No, he probably muted us. Anyway, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can still hear you.
Okay, so there's a lot of terms here that are actually very disrespectful, and they are a lot of things that are considered like, you know, like appropriation from the indigenous point of view. And you know, I think that I would love to hear Renee's input about this, and or know that she was able to speak up as well. But definitely, you know, there's concepts that, you know, they are being managed that I didn't hear much for the little bit that I know about Duffy, or like, you know, that he presented in a video that he introduced himself to us, where he doesn't talk as much as equity as he's doing here. And he's talking about, if I understood right, about decolonization process, decolonizing whole white, okay. Yeah, I know Duffy is here, Carlos. I'm just saying that on the video that he presented. Anyway, so concepts that I believe that he presented, for what I heard in the meeting, is about decolonization. It takes time to decolonize people. It's not going to happen from one day to another. It's not a concept. It's something that you need to understand and do within yourself with a lot of work. And this won't be achieved just by the deadline that they're trying to put in here. So I want to address that issue. And I also would like to say that you know, that the other concepts that I would appreciate if they can change the word of the psychedelia, you know, word to the medicines, and that they can have more respect for the medicines than anything else. So these are just like points that I'm noticing, and just because I'm gonna have to leave soon, but you know, I think that Renee, Carlos, everybody else, you know, like that is here, is gonna be able to speak up about this. The way that the set the I appreciate the intent of trying to do things how they're trying to do this, but really, even the way that they started this forum was a little bit insultive. So I would appreciate if that all gets revisited. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And I've written all that down if Duffy didn't hear that.
Just on a point on the term psychedelics, just what they were doing is taking a worst case for the poll, that no one wants that word. We want natural medicine. Like, that's what we want. We don't want psychedelics. That's like a really difficult word for us to win anything with. It's has a lot of baggage. But what they're doing is saying, okay, even in a worst case, you know, if the Colorado Attorney General screws us and gives us like the worst possible term, like, you know, can we win this? And that was, you know, what the polling showed, that, yeah, okay, initially, if we get that term, we're upside down, but that we can still win, even if they hit us with the worst term. So that's the intent of why they use that term. Nobody wants that. And we're fighting for natural medicine. Just, yeah, no one wants that term psychedelics in this.
Thank you.
Should we speak now to have our voices heard, or will we be heard in front of everybody too, of the other room too?
When Duffy has everyone round in circle, he's going to, I believe, first start with the chat and make sure those voices are heard. Folks who have already written in the chat, and then he's going to open up to everyone. And I think he's going to start in about 2 minutes.
Renee, I would love to hear what you have to say, because this is recording, you know, and I just don't trust right now yet the fact that we're going to be all able to speak. So it will be great if we can hear your voice too, because this is recorded, right? And he might be able to hear this too later. I appreciate the intent if voices are really honored, but I will love to see that.
Thank you, Andrea. Renee, if you have capacity, Dave, I think he's starting it back up. And if you have capacity, Renee, Duffy would like for you to, he would love to have you open. And I think he would pass the mic on to you.
Thank you. Claso kamati, Andrea, wherever you are, wherever you're going, be safe. And I hope you're having a gentle night. And yes, I am down. There are some serious concerns, and especially in policymaking. I work in policymaking spaces all the time, and this one is very tone deaf to inclusion and equity analysis. So I would love to talk about what does it mean to be restorative for our communities, especially talk about medicines.
Thank you. I don't think you.
Monica, I think you were talking and then you muted yourself.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Duffy knows that. I think he might be coming to unmute. I just wanted to make sure that, so I was just giving him a text, muting myself.
Hello?
Duffy, we can hear you now, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I was just letting folks know that we're going to start with Renee, and then we're going to review community agreements. I don't have any concern about Renee, you know, not holding those agreements without being prompted. So Monica, the agreements are in the chat though, if you want to throw them in the chat. These are just around holding a respectful container. But Renee, if you would start this portion of the open dialogue, I'd love to pass it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Claso kamati ometo, claso kamati atatonatiu, claso kamati tananzinklali, claso kamati abuelitos y abuelitas, and all the ones that came before and all the little ones to come. I do not hear very much when it comes to restorative justice for disproportionately impacted communities. I am highly concerned with how even the opening is. You do have indigenous communities that are right here. The Cheyenne and Arapaho aren't even able to reclaim and rename their own sacred spaces. And yet to not have their inclusion or to have any indigenous communication at the beginning, including with the land acknowledgement and prayer, is pure erasure in this space. And you need to know it's not just enough to hold decolonization, but you have to have a brave space to make room for it to say that you're truly moving in a decolonized, restorative way for disproportionately impacted communities and for indigenous communities. I am highly concerned about how incorporating prayers, especially at the beginning with our medicines in that way, and not including us at the beginning as priority and not understanding why that's equity analysis off the bat is literally erasure to our communities. We are right here. I've been involved with this process as much as I can, Andrea, Yoleteo, and many other spaces that hold this medicine for our communities, including even recently, because of tragedies in our own communities, needs to be acknowledged. So I'm really concerned that if you are enough to do land acknowledgement, that means that you know that you're on stolen land, and you should have known to make room for indigenous communities going forward with restorative justice. That being said, I also do not see restorative justice efforts to the medicine, the land, and the people. If you are only basing your policy making off of votership and completely that type of data analysis alone, you are not doing equity analysis, because half of our community is undocumented. And that also means indigenous communities especially. So you are not completely incorporating the data pool of indigenous disproportionately impacted communities again. So the type of analysis that you're already coming from is a very dominated, exploitative, agenda orientated space that is not fully understanding cultural context already off the bat in your policymaking. And I do understand what policymaking is. I work for the Environmental Justice Coalition for the state of Colorado right now with the governor. So I do understand what it means to have equity analysis, not just outreach for our communities. The reason I say this is because yes, you're mentioning this as psychedelics, we call these medicines. You're mentioning this as healing our spaces, but you're not acknowledging how that relates back to the biosphere and the implementation of these medicines. And all of this has to be included off the bat, because if our communities, even if we do it all right, since the 1978 Act, we can still be persecuted to the full extent of the law and thrown in jail no matter what we do. That has happened time and time again. I've literally seen chiefs with Bibles in their hands being handcuffed. So these are real issues. And I need this to be acknowledged with cultural context and reimagining and re-education, or this is not going to be transformative at all. And you do have the same exploitation potential of being predatory to our communities. So please be mindful going forward, especially about erasure, appropriation, and lack of restorative justice efforts for disproportionate communities. They should be priority in this, not just a side hand outreach. They should be priority because disproportionately impacted communities will be targeted first and are often excluded first, especially when it comes to these medicines. We have the highest forms of substance abuse, the highest forms of domestic violence, the highest forms of suicide rate, missing and murdered indigenous relatives, and I can keep going, all based on the same data. So please be mindful going forward and know what it really means to include us. And that does mean especially in representation of our own medicines on our own homelands.
Andrea, please speak up now. They're listening on the room.
Andrea?
Yes. So thank you all for being here. I totally support my sister, Renee, and everything that she had said. We were talking, while you guys were all chattering in the room, and we were mentioning all of these aspects. And while we thank you for the efforts that you're trying to do, we also ask for transparency. And we also ask if you're really an allyship of these medicinal plants and allyship, you want to be in allyship with us, with indigenous people, then you're going to let us have the lead of this movement. And you're going to let us be able to represent ourselves in order for you to support us in a good way, in order for us to fight what, our ancestors have died to keep this alive. So there's a big movement of awareness that needs to happen here. And something that I expressed earlier is that, you know, you are mentioning concepts of, you know, decolonization. That doesn't take just one day to do. It's taking generations of trauma, as Renee mentioned, for us to adopt these new ways. And now you cannot undo it in only 1 month. So I invite you to all of you to start really looking at yourselves and looking at your white supremacy attitudes that you have about the medicines, that you have about these concepts that are trying to only benefit you. And instead of you fighting as a good environmentalist for the earth, that's what a good environmentalist is. The ones that are fighting for the ones that cannot speak, which are in our indigenous knowledge and in our indigenous language, water has life. Water is life. The medicines are alive just as much as we are, and we all have rights. It's not for us to benefit as people necessarily, but we're supposed to be here to benefit them. So we want to invite you and to look at your appropriation too. When you are singing a Pachamama song that is coming from the southern areas, you know, of this continent, when you are singing this type of songs and this type of prayers, like my sister Renee said, maybe have the original people of the lands to do it and don't destroy the songs. So we are here to represent indigenous voices. We are here because we were called to this movement to go to the core of representing the plants and indigenous voices. And if you want to make allyship with us, you must be leaving us the intent to lead this movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. Thank you, Renee, as well.
Thank you, Tlazocamati.
Before we open up to the whole floor, is the mic doing the thing? I'm just going to review community agreements and anything that needs to be added for people to feel like they can fully show up. We'll check on that after I list these off. Where are they at? So respecting each other and honoring differences. We can do this. No interrupting people while they're speaking. We're gonna have a timekeeper from here on. It's L with a flag. For Zoom folks, we'll just notify, but 2 to 3 minutes. We have a lot of people to speak. I'll just let everyone know now, you know, if people have to leave by 8, that's okay, of course. We're gonna be going a little later, to like 8:20 at least. 8:20 at least. And then if you have conflict with someone, hold space for it outside of this town hall, including in the chat. We want to make sure that all comments coming in are directed to the group. So we've seen in the past with chat, people going off on each other a little bit, you know, one, keep respect, and then let's try to speak to the group. And then on the respect tip, we don't want people to feel like they have to walk on eggshells. Speak your truth, speak from the heart, and, you know, let's orient to community. That takes time to build though. And raising hands, elementary. So we'll pass the mic, raise your hand. We'll go in order of hands raised. Manera and I will be moderating. We'll also be, part of our moderation is this equity check. Just making sure that there isn't dominating voices and many different voices are entering the room. Monica's asking. So Monica's moderating in Zoom as well. So she's texting me. No, I'm not on my phone fucking around. She's asking, this may be coming from the chat, but she wants to know if you, Kev, would like a chance to respond to what was just coming through Zoom.
Sure. If I can.
You, for sure.
Yeah,
This is open.
yeah,
Cool.
okay. Renee and Andrea. Thank you both very much. And I just want to say that I feel tremendously honored that you both came into this call tonight. I think it's critically important that your voices are here. And what I would like to say is that, you know, I'm an open book here. I have a lot to learn. I meant no disrespect if you felt disrespected by my opening. And I just want to acknowledge that I feel, again, just grateful that you're sharing your voice. And in terms of moving forward, I feel like it's critically important that we do that together in the best way we can. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. What's going on, y'all? I'm Teddy. I want to start by saying, thank you to everybody here as well. Being here. So today we started with Kevin honoring his voice, his song, as well as some of the prayers that I passed around and shared with First Nations peoples. And I have some connection to the Shipibo Nation of Peru, and I enjoyed hearing that. But there's no amount of prayer or song or land acknowledgement that's gonna remove the fact that we have lobbyists with hundreds of millions of dollars behind them in the room leading this discussion today. And that while they may be extremely intelligent and fluid in their conversation and persuasive, that the interests that they represent are not our interests. New approach, I mean, at least what they were doing with cannabis had over $100 million from private investors. And one of the problems with these lobbying firms is, for the most part, it's dark money. You're never going to find all of the names who contributed, and you're never going to find the people who basically have New Approach's loyalty owed to them by the hundreds of millions that they donated. So it's a bit concerning, and I'm just not sure if everybody is aware of this. We don't know who New Approach is because they don't want us to know, unless they completely lay out their plans with transparency. I'm afraid that we're always going to be kept in the dark, and that the interests of big pharma or corporate interests, or even just the interests of private donors who already have stakes in the stock market for psychedelic, whatever you want to call it, bullshit is what I'll call it. They're the people that are funding this, and it's just really scary. It's dancing with the devil if you're gonna go down this road and with New Approach. I want everybody to be really, really aware that this will be exactly like what happened with cannabis. Thanks, guys. Oh, can I say one more thing? I don't represent anybody other than myself, but I do converse with a group of Indigenous voices, many of which share the same exact concerns. So these are coming from not only in Colorado, but around the country and around the world.
Before we move on, we see the flag. That just means there's 30 seconds left for you to wrap up.
That's all Manera.
I do have one question.
Okay, so let me just track hands. I
Yeah.
saw Manera. I saw some people over here. I saw Dak. I saw Nicole. Okay, so Manera, Lori, Nicole.
I guess one of the questions I had as I kind of briefly went through it, was, I saw this with cannabis as well, is I'm kind of concerned about the class of real estate that would be required to run a healing center, because that's how they have in BIPOC folks out of the market, was class A real estate is effing expensive, and then it's skyrocketed, and then you have to have $1 million to open a dispensary, right? Like, so is there a way we can limit the class of real estate so that it doesn't become this, like, can we add that to the policy?
Go ahead, okay. Yeah, well, do I need the mic or can y'all hear me instead of the mic? Yeah, okay. Yeah, just very quickly, thank you for that question. I definitely hear your concerns about that specifically, especially when we're dealing with so much gentrification in the city. You know, I think it's very important for us to have that discussion. And there's still a lot on the table in terms of how we can define what that looks like. In the language right now, there's no specific distinction.
Yeah, and that's the next one afterwards, right? And then all the indigenous folks are out.
Say it again.
I mean, like, because it's not defined in the language, the regulatory body then defines it later, right? And then we're locked.
That's a good point.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay.
That's, yeah, in conclusion. Sorry, and then.
Well, I had an, I can't breathe, so I'll just stay away from it. I tried to work, but I just started to get a little weird. So anyway, just very quickly, I did get a chance to talk to Kevin today. And I just want you to know that I was a Colorado Assistant Attorney General for about 16 years. I represented just about every kind of health regulatory program at DORA. So DORA was my client for 16 years. And then I moved into, I became the Industrial Hemp Program Manager for hemp at the Colorado Department of Agriculture. And now, just full disclosure, now I'm General Counsel for a research and development psilocybin company. I'm an adjunct professor at DU. I have my own practice, but my whole point of saying this is that the reason I left the job I love as the Colorado Assistant Attorney General was because I couldn't take one more case, and I mean this literally, I couldn't take one more case where I had a licensee who had a substance abuse problem and they were going to, you know, suspend that license, they were going to revoke that license, and I wanted to get this, I wanted to find a solution that kept the public welfare and safety, but also kept this person from committing suicide, and I couldn't take it one more time. And so now where I'm also I'm general counsel for the American Cannabis Nurses Association, and now I just feel that, so I'm very mainstream, I want to disclose that, but I'm going somewhere with all this. I honor all of the spiritual behind this. I may have a different spiritual background than you, but just as you started, I honor it. But this is a statute, and so I'm here just specifically to speak to the law. Because that's what we're dealing with here. And I do know all the things that I speak at a lot of conferences in cannabis. I know it's, I don't want the same thing to happen in psilocybin that I saw happen in cannabis. Such that, you know, I don't think people that are, and you've probably heard me say this, but I don't think people that are dying of cancer should have to go and try to get their medicine at a dispensary from a bud tender. With all due respect, it's just, it's just, you know, so all I want to say is I'm on your side. I'm going to be kind of quiet. I'll probably be working with Kevin a lot, but I understand these issues inside and out. I understand the legislature. I understand how these things work, and I'm just going to hopefully be able to bring, I'm fighting for all of you, and I want to be able to bring just sort of the practical, realistic aspect and bring my, hopefully be able to contribute with my expertise. So I just want to introduce myself, and then I'll probably work with Kevin a lot, hopefully. I'm just drafting language and things. You may not all agree with it, but I'm trying to help you get from point A to point B of whatever suggestions I bring. Does that all make sense? Okay, thank you for the couple minutes.
Well, we're.
Sure, yeah, I just couldn't talk with one. I don't know.
Okay, we have Nicole, how's it keeping out?
Yeah, there's consumption earlier on, but there hasn't been a whole lot since.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Forrester. I'm the Director of Decriminalized Nature in Boulder County. I have a background in speech language sciences and psychology, and I work in the mental health field. I want to start off by just addressing that the initiative that you're proposing starts off talking about mental health, healing trauma, healing depression. But I don't think we're acknowledging the trauma that's being caused by fast tracking this. And so I'm severely concerned that how can we say we're healing trauma if we're causing trauma in the process of passing this language? What's essentially being done is we're asking practices that have been going on unregulated for centuries to above ground themselves really quickly and calling it equity. And so I want to address that concern and ask, I understand the rush, I understand the good intention, but what's going to happen after this language is potentially passed is that all of that power that is currently held in the underground, in the unregulated system, is going to be transferred to the Department of Regulatory Agencies. It's going to be transferred to the Revenue Service. It's going to be transferred to the governor. It's going to be transferred to corporate interest, commercial interest, all of that. And so we're, I just want to reiterate, we're causing trauma in that process. And if we're coming at it from an angle of healing trauma, I don't think we're addressing the trauma that's being caused in that process. No matter how good and well-intentioned this language is, and I do see the good and the well-intentioned compare. I've read M109. I've read this initiative. I'm on the Responsible Reform Council for SPORE, and when we walked in to see the very first draft, I was expecting, Oregon 2.0, and I was really impressed that a lot of considerations have been taken and people have been listened to. But once we hand all of that over to the state, we don't know what's going to happen to the language. So if we don't take the time to really get this solid, we are disempowering everybody that participated in the process. And so I just want to really call that out and make sure we're aware of that I really think we need to slow down and really sit with all of these issues that are being brought up and trust the process of just taking it slow and not feeling that pressure of getting it done in 2022. I think there's a lot here, and it needs to continue to evolve in a very intentional way, and I don't know that that's what's happening. So thank you so much.
My name is AG. First, I just want to give a few appreciations. I'm really grateful for the different voices we're hearing, really grateful for the Indigenous voices, the call to slow down, and the ways that those are being honored. I'm really grateful for you two, Kevin and Ben, for coming and representing. I'm super glad to see how much progress the bill has made. It's amazing to see what's changed from the first version to the second version, and so I want to give a lot of gratitude for both of you for coming and really listening and being receptive to community feedback. I think that's super necessary. I've heard one thing that's like echoed many times, which is just there's this lack of trust because of lack of transparency. And so my question is, I'm wondering if you've been, since I know you're kind of like the new one here, which I'm super grateful to hear, I'm wondering if you'd be open to sharing with us a little bit about who you are, if we don't know you that well, like what your intentions, motivations, what brings you into this space. And if you can share about yourself and maybe new approach as well, I think would be super useful for building trust.
Sure. You want to go ahead and I think it's recorded. And then Veronica has a question.
Sure. I'll share a little. Let's see. Here are the most important things. 6'6", maybe 6'7", depending on how tall I'm standing. Originally grew up in Oregon, spent most of my life in Oregon. My wife and I moved to Georgia a couple of years ago to be closer to her family. And I spent my whole life working in progressive politics. So I come to this issue because I care a lot about ending the war on drugs and criminal justice reform. I don't come to it in the same way many of you do, from a natural medicine perspective. And I know that kind of makes me a little bit of an odd man out a little, but I also think we should end the war on drugs, and it's really important to me. Before I started working with New Approach when we ran the measure in Oregon, because I've run a lot of ballot measures in Oregon. I've run measures to raise taxes on corporations and a bunch of democracy issues and trying to change the environment, et cetera. And this was another thing that felt important to me, and so it was a great opportunity. And I really enjoyed my time working on this issue. And I think for two reasons. One, I came to it when I first got started as someone who was trying to end the war on drugs, and the amount that I've learned about how much healing and support these natural medicines have provided to people has also been really rewarding. And I've met a lot of great people who are doing a lot of great things to help people in the community, and that's been great too. I work with the New Approach now and help to coordinate all the policy we're trying to move on psychedelics around the country. We're working on this ballot measure, we're working on Senate Bill 519 in California. We're trying to be proactive to try to move as much policy as we can while we have this kind of window of opportunity. It feels like we have a window of change, and we want to help as many people as possible. I think those are the big things. One other thing I'll say that just about New Approach, just in case people don't know, is it's just a couple of us. So we're not real big, and we kind of just scrap it together best we can to work with people in different states and different communities. And yeah, so it's just a few of us. So some of the campaigns we run end up being pretty big. Like you end up spending a lot of money to try to win ballot measure campaigns. We spend a lot of money in Oregon to win. But when it comes down to like who the people are, like I represent like at least 25% of the 25% of the New Approach people. So it's just a small little team. And one last thing, people mentioned the New Approach. They've been working on psychedelics for a little bit. We worked on Seattle, Oregon, DC, a bunch of other places too. But our history really is worked to try to change the cannabis across the country for the last decade or so. So that's a good to know. That's it. Is that good? Anything else?
How about the money?
I'm left-handed.
Yeah, I know there were concerns about money and influence. If you can speak to anything of that.
I mean, I'll do my best.
How much are you all worth?
How much we all work?
How much are you all worth?
Oh, in terms of like.
Remember to raise your hands.
Sorry about
In
that.
terms of organization, I don't think New Approach is why worth anything. I mean, it's just a 501c4, the New Approach Advocacy Fund, basically PAC as well. But yeah, I don't think New Approach is worth anything. I mean, except for whatever we have in the bank, which probably right now is not that much. But I mean, we do raise money from people who are rich to pay for these campaigns. We really do. And I get why that makes some people skeptical, because money is power, and it hasn't really, money as a powerful institution hasn't really served most people very well for the majority of our country and history. So I get that, why people are skeptical of that. I'm not going to defend the role of money in our politics. There's some people that do, but I'm not one of those people. But I do know that having money allows us to run these campaigns and to make a change. And I think on par, the stuff we've been able to do with the money that we've been able to raise is, I defend it. I stand by it. I know that's not how everyone likes to do it, and I deeply appreciate that perspective. But that's what we do. We run political campaigns. They cost money, and we raise it. So that probably doesn't answer people's questions to satisfaction, but that's like kind of like my best first foot. Back to you for timing.
Veronica had a question.
Veronica had a question.
Yeah, you raised your hand earlier.
Yeah.
We were gonna,
Yeah,
shall we go you next, Alex and Zoom? When you unmute him.
Hey, Alex, you can unmute yourself. Alex, if you can hear us.
He's gonna get on through me, Valerie.
He wasn't there.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Okay, so Alex now. So, yeah.
Okay, Alex is out. Well,
Can you guys hear me?
Veronica, your question?
Hello, hello.
Actually, I think it's more of a comment than a question. So a lot of you might not know, but I have been the victim of more than my fair share of hate crimes. To the point that I was run down and run over. And the only reason that I survived was because a Black student in the same school had been run down, run over, and they backed up over him. So I knew enough that they were going to back up over me. So I was able to roll to the side against the wall where they couldn't do that. So I know what it is to be hated, and I know what it is to hate. And I spent a long time getting over a lot of trauma from a lot of other things, I'm not even gonna get into. But I learned something. I learned that I'm not gonna hate anybody for any reason. I'm not gonna even hate evil because I add my vibration to that. I'm not gonna hate white people. I'm not gonna hate rich people. I'm not gonna hate the people's ancestors that killed my ancestors. I'm not gonna hate. I joined this because I wanted to keep this out of medicalization. That is why. And right now, there is a bill that is going to medicalize this, that has legislative backing. If this is medicalized, police enforcement goes up because now you're in possession of a prescription medication. The Native people will be more hurt by this. And at this point, the way I see it, we don't have many choices. We don't. I don't like it. I know you don't like it. I can hear it. I can feel it. I got the shakes because of the amount of energy, of displeasure. I appreciate everybody for managing it in the way that they are. I really do. But my feeling is that we're out of time. And we're out of options. Because that bill, that's real. And colonization loves it. Because it gives them everything that they want. Everything that they want. So yeah, we got new approach here. You don't have to like me. Don't hate him, because that's on you. You don't have to like him, but this is something that we have. And if you see it as better than nothing, see it as better than nothing. Support it, don't support it. At the very least, don't be hateful and vote no. At the very least, let's see what nuclear nature can pull out and what that can do, but that's where we are, guys. I'm sorry, but that's where we are.
Got a few people on the chat. They can be.
Did Alex know about?
Yeah, Alex is coming in via somebody else, so he's ready for us. Right for him.
Alex, you can go ahead. Is he in there?
You want to go to David?
Yeah, and I heard Angela in the chat and then David.
So Alex is on as Valerie. Okay.
Alex is here, everyone. Duffy, if you can hear me, Alex is here.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you speak? Is
Yeah,
he muted? Yeah, Alex is up if he's ready.
give him a second. Maybe just getting the tech switched over. Alex,
Who is
want to try to see if we can hear you? Okay, I think Alex is coming in.
Yeah, talk. Yeah, hi.
Hi, Alex.
Everybody hear me?
Alex.
Hey, so I first want to say that I don't um represent anyone besides myself, but I just had to say to the woman who was speaking before, who was in the corner, that was one of the most condescending things I've ever heard. A couple things I just want to address because it seems like there's a fundamental not getting it. When people talk about, like when you say things like, it's the law, that's what we're dealing with. I want to point out that what we're dealing with is a European colony, a European colonial government has a system in place. And that's what I mean it's that law that you're talking about. And there's more than one law because that is still a European colonial government that is still illegally occupying this land, first of all. So I just wanted to point that out, make that clear, because I feel like that context is important with everything else and helps make the other side maybe illuminates on that a little bit. But the main point I wanted to make before that was that I think the essential fundamental question is this group going to make space and create the opportunity for actual Indigenous leadership? Or is this going to just be a round circle of discussion with pats on the back and thanks for input, but then it's still not, it's the people who have always made decisions continuing to just make the decisions? Or is there actually going to be the choice to allow Indigenous people to actually take the lead and to support them? And I think that is the real question here.
You want to respond? I can respond to that. Yeah, I'll respond.
Kevin, if you want to come closer to the center, maybe that'd be great.
Me come closer to the center?
Yeah.
After Kevin responds, we're gonna take it to Angela and David, I believe, in the chat. Is there anyone else?
Oh, that center?
Carlos.
Good.
Yeah.
Hey, Alex, thank you for the question. Hey, Alex, thank you for the question. And the short answer is yes. I want to make it clear that, at least for me personally, as someone who's at this time supporting this campaign, it's critically important to me that, you know, if this is going to be representative of all people, then at a minimum, it needs to be representative of our Indigenous elders and people who have that kind of direct experience as well. So the short answer, Alex, is yes. And there is room at that table, which, by the way, has not been set yet. In fact, I think that all of us having this conversation are a part of that table right now. And this whole time, we have been working to make sure that we are listening to and incorporating feedback from the voices that are important, meaning everyone here and everyone who's in this conversation, and that when it comes time for it, in terms of the who are representative or who's represented as part of this team that'll get formed here in the near future, that yes, it is inclusive and especially of Indigenous voices.
Angela, is it Angela Carlos David? Dana. We have David as well. We're just gonna do a little run through Zoom, folks. So we're gonna go Angela, David, Carlos.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I have been sitting here listening. By the way, I'm a psychologist. I have not only been listening, but I have been analyzing the ideologies in the room. I have been analyzing these ideologies my whole life. And so how I'm assessing this entity of New Approach and whoever's associated with them is that you have not done any work on establishing trust within the community. You have not answered any questions about money, donors, their ideologies, what they're getting out of this. There has been no outlining of the protection of nature. There has been no outlining, no language, and anything we have been shown about how you're going to center, you know, Kevin, how you're going to center Indigenous peoples. Decision-making power is based on, especially in this realm, this area called law, as someone had brought up, by money and white privilege, which y'all possess. And these medicines deserve respect, reverence, and humility. And the way that you are operating is far from that. The comments in the room of people saying things that are contributing to the disabling of the minority, the marginalized people's decision-making power. By this is all that we have nothing. That is contributing to this power that is already robbed, but we have been robbed of. I'm mixed heritage, I'm reclaiming my indigeneity, and I certainly do not want to go into a space with people who have been violent against me my whole life, whether they are intentional with it, unintentional, aware of it, or not aware of it. This operation, whatever you're calling this drafted bill, is violent. It is weaponized privilege that has a degree of lethality, not just to erase traditions, but to kill people, to continue to kill people. And so anyone who is trying to silence in this space or other, this passion that's coming through, that's intergenerational, that's 500 plus years long on this continent, is again working in the efforts of supporting the continuation of marginalizing the Indigenous peoples, people of color, Black, brown bodies. The war on drugs is the war on us, is the war on my family. I buried my father this past week, one of my fathers, because of his long substance abuse issues, because he was disconnected from his traditions. And you're going to tell me that your medicalized model is going to be a panacea, a revolution for him, that he can walk in there and access these clinics? That's not even going to, the system that you're operating in is creating these problems. It has created these addictions, these illnesses, this disconnection from one another, this lateral violence against one another, this idea of scarcity. So I want answers to the questions that people have raised. And you owe that to us, because you have a level of privilege that you're wielding against us. And I'm calling that out. but this is not a call out in the sense of you're evil. This is a calling in for you to really genuinely be in community. And first of all, protections exist. There's a Treaty of Hidalgo, okay? There is protections for spirituality for the indigenous peoples. If you truly aren't for the money and you truly want, to be an ally and you want to have equity and you want it for all people, then let the people who know and have a closest relationship with the land and with these medicines be able to lead. Protect them, protect us. And then we can figure out the rest of it later through a good relationship with one another, through a relationship with these medicines. I could say so much more, but
Thank you, Angela.
everyone else echoed what I needed to say. So thank you. Please hear this with an open heart.
Thank you, Angela. You're heard. Thank you. David and then Carlos. Yeah. You got it.
Yeah, thanks, Duffy.
And reminders, we're gonna wave the flag at 3 minutes and just keep an eye on chat for folks in Zoom. We'll give 30-second warnings. Go ahead, David. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. And just wanted to maybe offer a perspective here that I think there's two powerful healing modalities that this measure is trying to hold. And the new approach, where they're coming from, as far as like their primary, let's say, like bias is on that regulated therapeutic model. And that is, and it's not about, obviously there's a lot of suspicion and mistrust, and I understand that, but to just explain the virtue of it, and is that the majority of the population, like if you think about our parents, most of them are not going to be comfortable accessing psychedelic healing for their trauma, for their end-of-life anxiety, for the substance use disorder in a decriminalized community-based healing context. This is not something that a lot of people are going to be comfortable. They need that well-regulated kind of program where you've got accountability for facilitation, like real criteria for training, all that. So that's kind of for like the majority of the population that's just not going to be comfortable otherwise. And then the other truth is community-based healing. And obviously a lot in the room here, that's the where you guys are coming from. And that's a real truth, that the limitations of the therapeutic model, there's a real cost to access. As equitable as this is, and I think that the New Approach team has done a good job here of listening and really improving the measure. That the community-based healing, that to be able to sit for each other, to sit in ceremony, to grow the medicine, using your home, out in nature, at a concert, these are crucial, and to make sure we get that right and reflect the community priorities in this regard. And I think there's been a real, good effort here to really improve things, to really reflect that, so that you have now two really powerful healing modalities side by side. And the therapeutic regulated program does not interfere at all with that community-based healing. And then just briefly on the New Approach, Graham Boyd's the founder. He's the former head of the ACLU's Drug War Project. He's all about, criminal justice reform, ending the drug war, the ongoing mass traumatization of the drug war. A lot of the funders for New Approach, they're, philanthropists, gentleman, Henry Underhill is a, gay billionaire. He recently passed. But marijuana was this huge phrase, wasting syndrome. That was his primary motivation. Here's the gentleman who founded Adam and Eve Sex Catalog. He recently passed, Phil Harvey. He fought the government, a long protracted battle over, rights to sexual expression, and very libertarian. And he's been a big funder. So, it's generally been like people are coming from the right spirit here. They want to reform our criminal justice system. They want to end the drug war. They want to integrate the medicines, and everyone's learning. I mean, we're all learning, and so I think that the version of this ballot measure, I think, reflects a lot of the community input from the prior one, which I had some real issues with as well. So yeah, I'm hopeful that we can come together and appreciate that this version, this second draft really does reflect a lot of the concerns that have been expressed and that they've been heard and reflected in this language. And yeah, so thank you all, and
Thank you,
thanks for the
David.
opportunity. Yeah.
Thanks, David. Carlos is next. I promise we didn't pair y'all.
Can you all hear me?
Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Carlos Blazola. I'm here in Oakland, Ohlone Land. I'm chair of Decriminalized Nature National. The basic ethos of Decriminalized Nature is to get rid of criminal penalties, period, across the board. There should be no criminal penalties against humans for engaging with nature. That is our fundamental ethos. There should be no limits on our sovereign relationship with nature. It's not up to government or business entities or lobbyists to tell me how much I can engage with nature. Those are fundamental ethos that we carry. We were founded by a very diverse group, including Indigenous people, and the author of our first resolution here in Oakland was Yaqui Indigenous. That is the place where we come in our heart. I just want to respond to the idea of money in New Approach PAC. We would like for Privateer Holdings and Founders Fund to open their books, show us who's invested in there. That's one of the biggest donors of New Approach PAC. We also want to recognize a name that wasn't said, which was Miracle Grow, as in Roundup, Monsanto Bayer. So I think we have to be fully transparent if we're going to start naming names, because all of these people pull strings. I want to say what it's like to live in a world of colonization. It looks very top down. People come into your community, they tell you what's going to happen. They are absolutely convinced that their idea is the best idea. They tell you why you must agree with their ideas, and they don't listen. We've been having great success across the US, city by city. And one of the biggest challenges that we've had is New Approach PAC's efforts to push legalization over decriminalization. If you pass legalization first over decriminalization, then it leads to incarceration, because unless you decriminalize first, you will always have power forces pushing to reduce abundance. And that's the problem with legalizing before decriminalizing. I'm glad that they're happy to consider decriminalization in this bill. However, there's something really important happening in Colorado that I think all of us should take note of. We've been organizing across the US, and I've never seen something as special as is happening in Colorado with the emergence of indigenous voices in such a powerful way. And I think this is something that is incredible for our country, incredible for this movement. And so I'd like to offer today to New Approach PAC and to SPORE that we have started an initiative of our own, Decriminalized Nature and SPORE, to counter New Approach PACs because it was so egregiously colonialist. What we'd like to do now then is offer, because of these emerging indigenous voices, is that we all just stop, put down the initiatives, stop with any additional initiatives, and allow us all to sit with our indigenous communities of Colorado, use this as a model of how to do this throughout the US in a way that respects indigenous voices, that New Approach PAC does not move forward with its legislation, that SPORE and Decrim Nature do not move forward with the legislation for 2 years, and that we just talk in open space with the indigenous community. The idea that expediency, we have to hurry because of people dying of addiction. Our people have been dying for 500 years because of colonization. We can wait 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Dana, Rumsey, Lucia, and then we'll come back to Zoom in a bit. Yeah.
I'm Dana. I'm of mixed heritage, and I am connected with the indigenous voices. And I come to this with love in my heart for this medicine, and I don't want to see it medicalized. I want to see the indigenous voices take the lead on this and be able to bring it forward in a good way, so that it's not being colonized and licensed. And if you're not licensed, then you get fined and you get all of this other stuff. And yes, I am a licensed therapist, but I got licensure because I wanted to be able to do this and be able to have a voice in this movement and be able to help bring the Indigenous voices forward. I'm very passionate about this, and it can be a both and. And even though there has been, this is the way things have always been done, we can step outside of that box and choose to do it differently and listen and bring everybody to the table so that everybody is in agreement moving forward. And I think that that's really important. And if the Indigenous is asked to work side by side so that nothing is held, everything is transparent, everything can be seen, the hearts that are going into this and the reasons why we're doing this, so that we're all in agreement. I think that that would make precedents for everywhere. So that's what I have to say.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ramzi. I am on the steering committee for Decriminalized Nature Boulder, and I was formerly on the steering committee of Decriminalized Nature Ann Arbor. And I'm also on the responsible reform council of the Mycoalition for sport. And basically what I want to say is, I'm probably going to sound like a broken record for those of you who've been to town halls where I've spoken before. Basically going to say the same thing that I was been saying, which is a lot of the goals and intentions that we have in this room that may seem to be in conflict are not actually in conflict. They're not mutually exclusive. But what the crucial variable is the order. It's the syntax. Now, most of us kind of live in little bubble communities where a lot of our friends have and family have been using medicine for years, generations, and there's a legacy practice that a lot of us come from that needs to be protected by all means. And within that legacy practice, there's a lot of wisdom, there's a lot of tradition, and that needs to be protected. It's not, see, when we talk about colonial paradigms, when we say that your legacy practice with this medicine is only legitimate if this colonial government, gives it its blessing, and if you don't listen to their rules, then you get raided by SWAT teams and this and that. That's the paradigm that we need to be done with. But at the same time, 90% of America does not come from a traditional background where the legacy use, would appeal to them. So I think a few people have mentioned today that true equitable access affords people the right to access these medicines through a regulated framework or a medicalized framework. But a big but is we can't let any sort of medical framework or regulated framework preclude the legacy practice that has been going on for generations and centuries. And we have plenty of reason to suspect that a lot of the people who are heading this move to, start psychedelic companies that are on the NASDAQ, a lot of these people who, I don't know all of them personally, but there is pretty good reason to suspect. I'll give an example. Compass Pathways has already been in the spotlight for trying to patent the synthesis of psilocybin. So we have plenty of reason to believe that corporations have an incentive to come in and practice anti-competitive practices that will try to box out the legacy and indigenous use because that is bad for the bottom line if they allow that to go freely. So I guess to wrap it up, my point is we can have all of these systems in parallel. We can have the legacy indigenous system in parallel that has to be protected. And we can also have a regulated therapeutic model in parallel, but we can't let the regulated model infringe upon the legacy use, which is why the syntax is important. That's why it's decriminalized first,
then regulate. We don't just try to slap on an expedited regulatory model that might leave the window open for corporations to come in and lobby once they have financial leverage. So that's basically my point, is it's not decrim only, it's decrim first. Then we can talk about regulatory stuff. Thank you.
Yes, Lucia, then Nicole, and then we'll go back to.
Hi, everyone. This is my first Mycoalition meeting, so thank you so much for having me. My name is Lucia. I am a medical anthropologist, and I was also part of the early inclusion team at the very start of SCORE. It was part of the education arm that Dr. Danny created. So that was a couple years ago. So I have some knowledge about kind of how it was at the beginning. But what I did want to say is that I am a researcher on a study through CSU and the NOAC Society. And we have been interviewing underground psilocybin providers around Colorado to kind of get ahead of the regulatory framework and to inform the policy discussion. And my comments are fully my own. I think that a decrim model first is really helpful given the kind of early assessment of the data that we have, because what folks said was that the biggest problem with criminalization isn't like issues that they're having with clients. There aren't, you know, a large amount of adverse effects. It's not even problems with like the cops. They're not, you know, people in general. I think one of the things that was really interesting is people aren't afraid of the police. What's frustrating is that because they're pushed underground, they don't have the ability to share their wisdom and knowledge with other providers. And so decriminalization would allow for these folks who honestly have been doing this work for decades. Like this isn't, you know, some 25-year-old life coach. Like these are professionals. So, you know, for real, like these are professional people who, and I think that, you know, a lot of times, like when you hear the underground, you think of something being really disorganized, and some of your language, I think, actually is problematic because it alludes to that. Like on the first page, I was reading it in my bed this morning, and it, you know, says that, oh, the work's been pushed underground, and that kind of has an effect of making it feel like, okay, this is like really chaotic, really disorganized. And the truth is that it's not. It's like incredibly organized. Like these communities exist beyond, you know, I don't have personal knowledge of what's happening with Indigenous communities, but even in like predominantly white communities, like there is organization around this. And so I think it'd be great to decriminalize first, because these people would have the ability to actually like get together and share their knowledge and have their own community boards. Like we don't need a top-down organization saying, okay, like this is, thank you, yeah. We don't need a top-down organization saying like this is what ethics looks like. Like I think these people can decide for themselves. And like police, I do not want to use that language. Like they can, you know,
Supervise, self-govern.
Regulate.
Yeah, all those things, like, like with each other, you know? And then also hopefully Indigenous people and then other folks in more dominant communities, like they can learn and share knowledge. Like I just think it would be a great way to make people feel more safe. I know I'm running out of time. The last thing I just want to say is, you know, Kevin, I really appreciate your work, especially around Decrim Denver. But I do just want to say, like, I just wonder how much your involvement with, just like with corporate interests, like David Nixad for one, I know you're getting paid by him personally. He owns a company called Orthogonal. You can look that up to learn more about like money and where all this shit's coming from. But David, I was reading today, is trying to create a transdermal patch to deliver psilocin, for instance, into the body. So David Nixad, Orthogonal, that's someone I know about. Roadman was another organization you were a corporate consultant for. And I know you were open and kind of talked about how you decided that you needed to back out of that, but you did do that work. And that's like what I know about, you know. And I just wonder like how those early influences like 2 years ago have affected your decision to pursue this medicalization model, which is something to meditate on.
Nicole, and then There are a couple of things, yeah, I mean, I think you guys were thinking about that.
What time are we?
Or-
Eleven.
You got two people in the queue and.
Okay, and then we'll just read the one label like closing comments, I think, that might be the most appropriate way to kind of try to address. Cool.
Yeah, this will be real quick. It's just a question, comment about the bill that was mentioned that's gonna medicalize this. I've been aware of that attempt to pass that bill for at least like the last 2 years. I think this is the 3rd year they've tried it, and I'm curious, Kevin, what your involvement in that in the early stages was. And I'd also like to ask, you know, I see the risk of medicalization in the new approach proposed initiative, just because, you know, even if we're decriminalizing, as proposed, DORA and the regulatory system, especially when you're leading with this mental health approach, they're gonna be looking for those types of experts to guide, you know, even if the regulatory or the advisory panel is written the way that it is, they're gonna lean towards that type of knowledge and that type of background to influence how this gets regulated. And so I don't understand how this won't just turn into another medical model, even if we're proposing it with good intention differently. And I have a lot of concern about that. And yeah, I think that's all. I'll let someone else talk. Thank you.
Should I respond to that stuff real quick?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chance to respond.
No, at the end.
No,
He's
no,
gonna do it
yeah.
at the end.
Well, we're gonna do it at the end. Oh, just remember the energy of the room. I'm just trying to.
Facilitate that.
Okay. Let's come back to you.
So who's up on?
We got Tara first, Moon Gazer.
Tara?
Tara staff, Moon Gazer feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Stay there.
Tara.
Hey, guys.
There you go.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Wonderful. I just wanted to offer a little bit of a song here to maybe break the energy a little bit here. So
Well, let it happen.
I empty myself over again. Nothing to be or to achieve. Simple, beautiful clarity. I lay down my sword at your feet. Spirit, move me. Where would you have me go? Spirit, show me. What do I need to know? I surrender it all. Can't fight anymore. Take me in your arms and teach me the nature of love. I am reborn, my heart is open wide, flowing with grace through time and space. Finally, I feel my place. I lay down my sword at your feet. Spirit, move me. Where would you have me go? Spirit, show me. What do I need to know? I surrender it all. Can't fight anymore. Take me in your arms and teach me the nature of love. May the light of my soul keep guiding me home.
hope it helped a little bit. Love you guys.
Valerie and G.
Yeah, G. Hand raised a while ago. And
Yeah, G, I think G was first.
Yeah, G, go ahead.
Yeah.
That rocks too.
Hey, hey y'all. Well, first I want to thank the Indigenous voices that have spoken here. I am Indigenous myself. I am a Huirarica woman from northern Mexico and tribes here in southern Colorado. And my lineage has carried a traditional medicine of Mexico. And a lot has been covered today. I want to echo what Carlos said and some of my other Indigenous brothers and sisters. And so I'll just share some reflections. I want to say to the gentleman that opened up, and this person meant well. I was there once too. Through colonization, my family and myself, I didn't know. I didn't first of all know that I was Indigenous. That part of myself wasn't valued. And so when I found these medicines, when I first started with LSD, then moving on to traditional plant medicines, I started becoming more and more aware through my work in reclaiming my indigeneity of what appropriation is and what working with these medicines in an appropriate and respectful way. And so I have some concerns about you're not naming necessarily the medicines, but are you aware that most of those do not grow here? Most of there's medicine that's coming from South America. There's just a medicine that's in scarcity coming from Mexico. I know that plant is not included here, but where are you going to get these medicines from? And so my concern is with these private companies that are going to come in, are you going to you cannot patent these medicines. So my concern is around artificially making these and putting them in the hands of this capitalistic exploitative system where you need to have licensure. And that is concerning because I feel there's an area where they can be created artificially, and you cannot go to a Western school and you cannot learn these teachings. You cannot go down to the jungle for 2 months and think that you can facilitate these ceremonies. There's so much that you do not know in this system, and handing it to Indigenous people who have carried this for generations, their whole entire life. You cannot learn that in these models. My concern is how much more are you going to exploit from Indigenous communities? We've already made tourist traps from these medicines, and you're going to do that here? So I asked all of you, with all of this money and with this privilege, how much more are you going to exploit nature? Do you realize that you're hurting yourself in the process? Do you realize that colonization has hurt for Indigenous people, but it's hurt you too? And what you're doing is you may feel that it's coming from a place of, yes, everyone deserves access to these medicines. We all do. It is our birthright to have access to these medicines. It's for all of humanity. We are all children of the earth. Okay, but if we work with these medicines, I invite you to make a prayer with these medicines that you want to legalize. Have you consulted? Have you asked for guidance from this medicine to lead you on how we can decriminalize it here? Have you? If you did, you would know that this is not the way. We don't need regulatory agencies to tell us how to work with something that is an extension of us. We don't need an age limit. We don't need the government telling us how we can and how we cannot work with these medicines. Decriminalization and slowing down is the way to go, because there's a lot to talk about. As you can see, Indigenous people here are not staying quiet. Okay, we will fight for these medicines. My people have died for these medicines, and I will give all that I can to protect them from the hands of capitalization and exploitation. So thank you. And I will say about the appropriation piece too, I do thank the gentleman who opened like that. That was me. Okay, and now I have learned to step aside and let the elders lead, to step aside and let Indigenous people lead, because we are led by the medicine, because we have the ears to listen. So step back and let the medicine speak to you. Let Indigenous people speak. I invite you to use these medicines as a way to reclaim your own lineage. They are helpers of that. For European descent, there's psilocybin that does grow abundantly everywhere. That's also something that nature shows us. These medicines don't
G.
grow in Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you, G. Yeah, we're just trying to keep time, but that was necessary medicine that you shared. Thank you. You said Valerie? Valerie.
It's actually Alex again.
Yeah, Alex, we're gonna open it up to people who haven't had a chance yet.
Okay.
Thank you. Who else is next? There's Jazz. Oh. Well, in lieu, oh, Jazz is back. Ready? Jazz, you're up.
I'm very emotional right now. I'm very confused. I'm really sad. I'm really sad because I came into this room 6 months ago and I was really excited about something great happening. And I've come into this community about a year ago. I moved here from Canada, which is it has a history of a lot of colonization. My ancestors are from North Africa. It's my own grandmother. And I came into this community really excited to be a part of something really amazing. And I've tried really hard and I've put a lot of effort into being part of as much of it as I can. And I see everybody here today putting in their effort. Everybody putting in their effort. And I thank you all so much for doing that. And I want to say that Kevin and Ben and Duffy and people involved at SCORE and Mycoalition made this possible today so that we can hear these very important words from the Indigenous communities. This is all an effort to learn. We are all learning. We are all trying to do better. And the language that I have seen from New Approach is the most progressive language that I have seen thus far. Yes, it can be better. And that's why we're here, so that we can listen. So far, what I understand from the language is that people can continue to legally use these medicines in their homes. Thank you. They don't have to be facilitators. They don't have to open healing centers. They can continue to do the things that they've been doing and not fear the police coming at their door. That's what this language allows. And it allows people who subscribe to the biomedical system to access these medicines in that way as well, because we all have the right to access these medicines in the ways that we need them. And we do live in a place in the United States of America where people think that they need doctors to tell them how to use these medicines. Many people do not need that, as you alluded to very properly. Many people in our communities are doing this with a lot of regulation and understand how to hold these medicines properly. From what I understand, and I have been reading this language very closely, and I've been involved with a lot of the different iterations, those people can continue to do so legally with this language. And so maybe I'm not understanding something, when we say this is only a medical model. And I think it's through this confusion with what's happening with DORA and what will be on the advisory board and with limits. And I think from what I'm really feeling in my heart is that new approach is listening to those things. And we're trying, and I think maybe what I do agree with is that we need a little bit more time. Because there's a lot here. There's a lot, just a little bit more. And I know we've been working on this, and the new approach has been here since June. And community's only really been involved since September, October, and November. And actually that's kind of, anyways, I'm for time. Thank you. I spoke my truth, and I really love you all so much. And this has all been just so fucking emotional over the past 6 months. And I honor everybody who has been fighting this very hard fight. Thank you.
You guys want to stand up and go?
Yeah, we'll cluster the mic where we want.
Just anywhere over here, so it's close to this stuff over here.
You want to sit down?
You got it.
Okay, so
We're coming to close. I'm just letting some folks know.
a couple of things that I heard that were specific policy questions I just want to address best I can. I was trying to take notes. Really early you raised that real estate question. That's a good question. I'll find out. I don't know. It's a specific question, but it's a legitimate one. If we can tweak it to make it better, I think we really should. It's a good idea. You mentioned the derogatory language at the beginning of the bill. That seems like I'd love to see what you think you could say to make it better. We should check that out too. That's a good point. Got it. And I mean that, like I'm like it's there's no malintent in that language, but I'm sure it can be done. In terms of a bunch of folks talked about decrim first and then regulation. I feel like that maybe is the most important thing that I wanted to say is that the intent of this measure is decrim first and then regulation, and that's kind of how it's written. What will happen if it passes is that, is it on passage or is it like
Passage personal use goes into effect.
Yeah, so the decrim thing happens on passage.
The governor has to certify the election that happens within two weeks. Yeah.
So once the election if we win, the election certified, the decrim piece happens right away. The regulatory piece, there's a window that will take a while. It takes, I'm forgetting my dates because I'm on the spot. Thank you. 18 months in the current draft. Thanks, Sean. Which is, I think, hopefully enough time to make sure that the some of the concerns that people have had around making sure that the underground is respected and lifted up in the appropriate way is done well. And that's, I think, part of the intent is to do both pieces well. That's what we're trying to do at least. And so I hear that some people might not agree that that's the best approach, and we think there might be a little bit different timeline that would be better, but that was at least the intention. And then the last thing I just want to say before I hand over to Kevin is that Kevin and I, we haven't really worked together that long, really, right? We've known each other for a couple of years, but like this is like really been the first chance that we've got a chance to really partner. And he's been a great partner. And one of the things that I really respect about Kevin is that he's been really willing to hold a group of people that he's not really worked with that closely before accountable for what you all have been saying. And I just think you're lucky to have that guy fighting for you. And I really respect how much he's improved this measure. It wouldn't be as good as it was if it wasn't for him. And so I just want to say thanks to him too.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Questions about the financial stuff, because those are important and I want to be transparent. Roadman, huge mistake. Those guys were terrible. 2 or 3 months with them. Orthogonal, David Nixon, I like him. Because he's a black sheep. He hates Christian Angermeyer. He hates Compass. He works with some of the best chemists in the industry, and I'm talking people that go back to the 50s and 60s. and the products he's developing, you know, he talks about pharma with an F versus pharma with a PH. His stuff is naturally derived, 100% plant material, but, you know, scalable. I think I recognize that like pharma is coming from this, folks. If we don't know that already, just look at Compass Pathways. And also, what an incredible opportunity for a lot of people who are looking for faith in that. I know personally, right? Like we're doing here in Colorado, like the work that Decriminalized Nature is doing and has done and will continue to do. Nicole, you know, Carlos, and Warrior Brother, I see you over there, man. Thank you. Thanks for holding me accountable too. If you guys could look at my bank account, you'd wonder how you made it tonight, by the way. Okay, son, married. I struggle everyone. I don't want to get too vulnerable about that, but it's been hard. And I'm still here doing this and coming into this room, especially in this conversation, because this is important to me, because I know how important it is to all of you, which is why we're all here. And I'm willing to take arrows for people. Okay? Thank God I don't have to necessarily anymore, because it's just been too fucking long. I'm happy to have a team that I trust and work with people that I trust and rely on people that I can trust. And there's a lot of trust building that needs to happen still in this space. I recognize that. And I know I have more work to do. The bills, Nicole, this is the first year. Last year, they didn't get off the ground. This year, Vicente Cedarberg, strategies and their team just went off with it. Didn't talk to community, didn't talk to anybody. And that's what Veronica was referring to, by the way. Not National Medicine Health Act 2022. The bill she's talking about is a bill that's going to go through the Colorado State Legislature that will medicalize psychedelics and medicines. Okay. You know, I don't open up that much. I keep a very tight friends group, I think for good reason. Okay. I say that because the invitation is for all of you to actually get to know me a little more, because most of you don't. I've worked with a lot of you. I'm excited to continue working with most of you, hopefully. I'm willing to wear the hat of the heady policy guy. But I think what's most important for all of us here is that we are together in this community. We all have a lot of different perspectives and worldviews. I think at the end of the day, we all mostly kind of want the same thing, which comes down to people having choice. And it's like Veronica said, I don't think we have time to wait. Because, and by the way, Dr. Angela, none of this stuff is a panacea. No one ever said that, man. We need work. We got to work on this. The only way we can work on this is if we work together instead of hating on each other, instead of beating each other down, telling a person that they're wrong and I'm right and I know better because of my experience. You know, what if we brought our experience to bear in a way that was entitled to a conversation, actually creating a real community around this in Colorado? Because you know what? Not everyone in here is the Colorado community through this work, which is important why we're here, because I think this room has a tremendously powerful voice for what that community can look like. But at the end of the day, we got to find out who our people are. We got to find the others. It's not just us in this room, it's us and. So I'm going to get off my soapbox. Ben took really good notes tonight. I was really trying to listen and take a lot of stuff in because it's been hard. But I'm happy to be here. And I will keep showing up like this. And we will work towards better transparency. We will work towards more communication and collaboration and create something beautiful for Colorado. So next steps, you know, we're gonna get back into language. We're incorporating feedback as of right now until the end of the day tomorrow night. Now what that means is that we still need to be in conversation. I think as we make adjustments to the language, we at the very least want to bring it in front of SPOR and go back and forth. And other folks that want to continue talking about this, if you feel like potentially maybe we could actually do this together, like let's stay in dialogue. Okay, you guys have an email. You guys can contact me. I'm happy to share it. So thank you all so much for coming tonight. Duffy, SPOR, thank you so much for hosting. Jared, Nick. Can we get our hands together for Jared and Nick, please? Thank you all so much for coming tonight. Thank you.
I'm just gonna say a couple things, and then I would love to have closing words if anyone from Indigenous Voices, if anyone's still on Zoom, Teddy, here, Dana, would like to have closing words. If not, I would invite Monica if she'd be willing, no pressure though. But yeah, I'm willing to close. Nicole, so much has been said that I felt was crucially necessary, medicine, truth spoken. Thank you everyone for showing up. Nicole said something earlier. Fuck this. That I hadn't heard spoken in a way, the way that you articulated it in this space before. And that is the trauma and the suffering and the struggle of so many people who have rallied around this in response to this, I just got a paycheck, today, and I'm, grateful that I get to get paid to do this sort of work. But all of these volunteers, people coming in, Indigenous Voices, people are putting their heart and souls into this and haven't had space to consider something that's so near and dear as original relationships, restoring our relationships and community, and to be together in community, to really build the relationships first, to get an understanding for each other, to then maybe consider policy strategy. Instead, people have been put into a pressure cooker and had to, figure out, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? I don't even know you. I don't even know who you are. We have to get to know each other. That's traumatic. It is fucking at the base, a foundation that is not embodied in the medicine that I know that we're all here to try and pour into ourselves and communities, into the world, for a real healing that's rooted in restoring relationships, that's holistic, that's not prescribing a pill and framing this as like, this is what's gonna solve the mental health crisis and things like that. The mental health crisis comes from generational trauma. And it's not mental health, it's whole health. So I just want to say that I believe what Carlos said earlier was also crucial to heed, that the Indigenous Voices group that's forming in Colorado is the biggest Indigenous group that we know of, and that's organizing around this movement. And this is bigger than just a policy campaign. That we're trying to build a movement. But even before movement, community has to precede movement. But we're jumping way ahead to policy. SPOR exists to try to build that foundation. And I recognize that there are many factors and many conditions that are putting all of us in a sort of box and looking at different timelines and scared of the FDA, scared of Compass, and all this. We can trust community. We can trust spirit. We can't just give responsibility away to, you know, the medicines are gonna take care of it for us if we just, you know, get it to everyone. No, what's our collective set and setting? Right now it's a colonial paradigm. So Indigenous voices in Colorado, this group emerging, we SPORE will stand with this group and look to them for guidance and leadership. And I do pray that New Approach will do the same. And if there's a community consensus that there needs to be more time, that's heeded, because losing a few days to gather signatures is nothing compared to what would be sacrificed as far as trust if it's pushed forward and pulled forward. So I thank you both sincerely for being here. This was pretty wild. And it does take courage to show up. And I know that you've caught heat. I feel like what the heat in this room is love. We want to build community. We do need to build trust. We want to build trust. So please do keep showing up. So we need it. We need to build fractally. You know, I could keep going. I broke my 3-minute rule. I see you, Monica. Were you down? Or was anyone else volunteering?
I'd like to definitely say something.
Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to speak too. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm definitely not going to give an inspirational speech at the end. I don't think that's what's needed from my perspective in this moment. I'm more interested in doing an equity check-in with my folks. As an organizer, as you know, the co-steward of SPORE, I feel like we probably could have done a better job of making sure that our folks were represented and heard, and also doing some equity check-ins. And just making sure that when we talk about this work, we're not talking about future visions, but we're also thinking about this here moment. And in this moment of existence, I am seeing Black, Brown, and Indigenous people on this call who are not feeling nourished from this. And so I'd invite all of us collectively, especially organizers, regardless of what side we're on, what does it really look like to show up for our folks in this moment? I think that a lot of times we have an idea of thinking about the future and holding space for our folks, but we're all collectively here right now. So I, as a co-organizer of this, really want to apologize that space was not held in the way that it really needed to be for us to have a conversation that felt nourishing on all ends, and not just hearing about policy and not just hearing about initiatives, but also making sure that the work that we're talking about wanting to steward together, regardless of whether or not, whatever it looks like, was clearly not mirrored here in this session. And so as someone who is Black and Indigenous, I'm sad for myself, and I'm also sad for my folks on this call. So I just wanted to apologize. So thank you.
We'll leave it with the sorrow that we can hold together. And
Also wanted to open up real quick because I do see a few hands that are raised that maybe didn't have the space to talk. And so I just wanted to, I know that we're clearly running way over, but
I see
folks,
Andrea raising her hand.
Yeah.
Andrea, will you? We're gonna close with Andrea, you all. They're starting to close up here.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And the honor to close this meeting today. You know, when there is confusion and when there is dialogue and when there is opinions that they are different, that is a great opportunity for change, and it's a great opportunity to do things differently. I understand people have to leave, but if there is no time for me to speak, I'd rather not to speak if people are not going to listen.
No, please, Andrea. Hey, we're listening.
Thank you. I want to appreciate everybody who spoke up today from any perspective. You know, nothing that it was shared here was shared personally, because we're not talking about people here. We're talking about Mother Nature and about how we can live in alignment with Mother Nature and do something different for the future generations and for us now here in the present. We are not talking about taking a stand or a position. We're talking about respect and transparency and honoring the ways that it have been holding this way for so long. I'm sure that everybody over here had an opportunity to experience the power of these medicines. And I love what Gabriel G shares, saying, sit with the medicine and ask for guidance. Ask for guidance. Be humble enough to ask for guidance, even if you had the data, even if you had the degrees, even if you had the donors and the money and the support. Ask for your own wisdom from these beautiful, powerful medicines. I know we're talking about healing. I know we're talking that it will be great that more people, somebody say 90% of the people. I don't think that is 90% of the people. There is a lot more of us in the United States. If we want that these sacred medicines get to the people that they may need it, we need to trust the medicine, because the medicine have a spirit. And if you want to control that, please check within. What is the need to want to save so many people? Maybe the one who needs to be saved is you. Nobody is the owner of the truth. No one. We can only own our own truth. And we know how powerful this land is. This is Colorado. This is not California. This is Colorado. And we must respect this land. We must respect the ancestor of this land. We are, right now, you are sitting in a stolen land where people were massacred, where people were killed and forced out of their land. So you can be here today, there sitting with your computer, with your privilege. That's not minor. It is time that you start recognizing and they start to decolonize yourself, including me. We all are on this together. And sometimes we do a lot of colonizers things out of subconscious mind, out of the subconscious. And this is when these plant medicines are our helpers, our teachers. They guide us. So be humble enough to please to ask for guidance. No one here is hating anyone. No one is here is attacking anyone. If you're taking things personally, that's on you. Nothing here shared has been personal. We as Indigenous people are the stewards of Mother Nature. We speak for Mother Nature, and Mother Nature doesn't belong to any of us. So I invite you, all of you, to see what happened here today in Colorado, to honor what is happening, to be grateful that these conversations are happening, and to ask to have a humble heart to move forward with this. Somebody mentioned that this was happening because of the organization Sport and Mycoalition. We only got an invitation last night. This is happening because Great Spirit is working through us, because Mother Nature is working through us, not because an organization. Yes, money has power. It's a beautiful energy that it helps us to move things around and create and help others, right? But Mother Nature is the real power. I just want you to invite you to sit with what happened here today. And if you feel uncomfortable, ask yourself, why do you feel uncomfortable? How is this helping you in your path? You are not the savior of anyone by yourself. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for the opportunity for my brothers and sisters who speak today. And you guys had meetings since last year, at the beginning of the year, closed door meetings. And here people shared that this meeting were open for everybody. That's not truth. Don't lie. Don't lie not because you supposed to tell the truth to us, but because you're lying to yourself. And if we really want to help out, start with you, because the power that you have that impact the conscious collective is way more than having voters for an initiative that we all know has other interests. So please sit with what happened here today and ask for guidance. I appreciate you all. We are all in this together. We are all human, no matter what race or where we come from. We are all here together. And Mother Nature needs us in the right relationships, respecting, being honest, and speaking with passion. Not because you want to attack somebody or you want to fight for something, but because we want to heal as a humanity. And we will be guided by this medicine. We will. When you stop thinking that you are the one actually making the decisions, because we're not. Thank you for listening. Thank you for those who stay over there. And remember where you're standing. That Colorado is a powerful state. It is a powerful land. When you are standing, that's a stolen land. Please read about the massacre. Read what happened there. How many people were killed there? How many women were throwing themselves to the soldiers who were killed because they wanted to save their children? You have the privilege to be there today. Ask for those souls to guide you, because this is not about us. This is bigger than us. And like I said, Mother Nature doesn't belong to us. We belong to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. Thanks everyone for hanging on for all this. Bless you for being here. Have a beautiful night, safe drive home. And yeah, let's have a meal or something, whoever wants to do that at some point soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.